All right, good morning. In pondering and researching the passage this week, I hit a few bumps in the road. We were reflecting in Sunday school this morning about how this passage is so central to Jesus' ministry and to our faith. It's very, very important. And yet you read it and it kind of feels like a mouthful. Somehow it's central and yet difficult for us to understand fully. One theme emerged, though, this week, which I'm not sure I picked up on in the past. I hinted at it some in the children's sermon, inspired by a sermon I heard by Fred Craddock. I know I mentioned him last week. I've been reading a book. I'll stop. But it's what we'll call knowing God. It turns out that knowing God and believing in God are two different things. Most people, it seems to me, stop at believing. If you go on YouTube, you can look up countless debates among intellectuals about the existence of God and arguments about whether or not God exists, in effect, whether or not a person ought to believe in God. And there was a while in my life where I would watch those and get into those, and I did a paper on what was called the New Atheist Movement, and some of those arguments were interesting to me. I got fairly invested in some of them, as if these arguments or debates between Christians and atheists would settle the matter. But to tell you the truth, I don't pay attention to them very much anymore. Maybe one reason is because over time I've come to understand that belief isn't just an intellectual matter. It's not just a matter of the mind. It's also a visceral experience, something we feel, something that's hard to explain, but which we can recognize in our hearts. I want to give you an example about that, what I mean about believing as a result of our awareness or our experience. And then I want to show you what I mean by moving from believing to knowing. Does anybody watch the television show The Office? It's sort of there we go, at least one person. It's a silly show, I acknowledge that, but it was really popular when I was in college and everybody would watch it and talk about it. There's this one episode, season 2, episode 1, it's called The Dundies. And if you watch the show, then you know the Dundies, these are fake awards that the boss, Michael Scott, gives to his employees. They're very, very silly. They're mostly based on like inside jokes. So maybe if somebody knocks down a stack of paper, they might win the Dundie for clumsiest employee, stuff like that, okay? Michael loves the Dundies, and he goes over the top in his dedication to them. And the office party for the Dundies is going to happen at a local Chili's restaurant. Nobody's really into it, to be honest with you. And Michael's getting frustrated because he can tell nobody cares, even though he's put all this work into it. One of the characters, Pam, has a really bad night. She gets into an argument with her fiancé, Roy. If you watch the show, you know that Roy's not the best guy, and then they're not going to be together. And so she has this very low moment out in the parking lot where she just wants the night to end, but because of her office obligation, she has to go inside and participate in the Dundies. But something happens where maybe it's because this argument with her fiancé is behind her, and really her relationship, it turns out, with her fiancé is behind her. But there's like a new sense of openness to everybody there, and she starts to encourage people, and she connects a little bit more with Jim, who, if you watch the show, know is really the love of her life. There's one point where Michael's getting really frustrated But Pam encourages him, and suddenly everybody is into it. Well, anyway, Michael calls Pam's name because she has won a Dundie for the cleanest Keds, the cleanest shoes in the office. And she's playing along and she's into it. It's just so fun to watch how happy she is after that low moment. And at first she plays along, she thanks everybody, she thanks her Keds and for being clean and being there for and all this stuff. And finally the speech closes with her saying this: I want to thank God because God gave me this Dundie and I feel God in this Chili's tonight. I've noticed there are these times, usually unexpected times, when an awareness of God overtakes us. Maybe it's in nature, the serenity of a flowing river, the majesty of a mountain whose peaks penetrate the clouds. Maybe it's just a deep breath of fresh air. Maybe you have had this visceral experience or awareness of God in art. I kind of had it watching Pam give her Dundie speech. Maybe a singing voice that's so beautiful, like an angel. I saw a clip of the 2015 Kennedy Center Honors, and there's a surprise singer, Aretha Franklin. And, she'll pass away a few years later, but she just nails it. And you can see everybody in the crowd tearing up. Don't tell me that God wasn't there in that moment. It could be a novel that became a part of you. I remember reading The Catcher in the Rye. I think it was in 8th grade. And I don't know what it was exactly, but something unlocked in me when I read that. Like maybe it was a permission to be honest that I didn't know I needed because of the brutal honesty of Holden in the book. Sometimes I feel God just driving down Spring Garden when the students are walking in between classes. Partly it's nostalgia. Partly it's a reminder that there really are still people out there working hard for a better outcome in the future. I'm not sure exactly, but I know what I feel. Maybe that's one of the challenges, actually. It's not exactly easy to explain this visceral experience of God leading to belief. Is it awe? Is it gratitude? Is it recognition that there exists something beyond ourselves? My guess is that what I'm describing is more or less universal. Maybe it's been a while since you felt it, but I bet you have. And it seems to me there are a lot of people who know exactly what I'm talking about, except they don't call it God. I wonder if sometimes we get our definitions mixed up, or if words fail. But regardless of how you want to describe these experiences, the point is they're real and they matter. Being made in the image of God, it seems to me, there is a part of us that is aware of God's presence. But one of the mistakes we tend to make is both starting and ending with this awareness. So sure, these types of experiences can be powerful, emotional. Maybe they spark belief. But the question then is, what's next? Is this just a feeling we have that floats away? What do we do with it? Do not let your hearts be troubled. These are the words that begin what scholars call the farewell discourse. In all four Gospels, Jesus gathers with his disciples for a final meal before he is betrayed and arrested. But in John, the meal, or at least the time they spend together at the meal, is prolonged. there is a real emphasis on Jesus' pastoral role in caring for the disciples as they begin to process what's about to happen. Why are their hearts troubled exactly? People are complicated. Emotions are layered. So most obviously they're in shock, and they're beginning to grieve this news they're receiving. Maybe they heard it before, but it's really starting to sink in. They will soon lose their leader, their friend. But I think maybe it's Philip who identifies the less obvious reason that their hearts are troubled. Do you remember what Philip says? Lord, show us the Father, and we will be satisfied. Philip shows us they are not satisfied. You see, they believed in Jesus. They had witnessed the miracles and the healings and the crowds of multitudes. They'd heard his wise teachings. They'd observed his courage in the face of temple authorities. They saw a man who spoke the truth with confidence, who wasn't afraid. They believed. But even in this reverence, even in this devotion in which they're willing to drop everything and follow him, there was also a sort of expectation. We heard this echoed the other week on the walk to Emmaus when Cleopas said, "We had hoped he would be the one to redeem Israel." You see, they're unsatisfied with how things have gone. It's like they were waiting and waiting and waiting for the big moment of redemption, and in their minds, it never came. In their minds, this battle with Rome, this freedom the people longed for, that hope was gone. So I think one of the things that Jesus is doing in his response is he's asking them and us, is it possible to get so lost in what could be or what could have been that we miss what already is? Thomas's question really is not much different than Philip's. Show us the Father. Thomas said, how can we know the way to where you are going? It's just like what Philip said. Well, Jesus is the Father. Where he goes, the Father goes also. Jesus is the way. I am the way and the truth and the life. You're not satisfied because God is not what you thought. But don't you remember all that we've been through? Don't you know there is God in compassion when we were engaged in compassion together? There is God in courage when we had to have courage together. There is God in self-giving love. Jesus is saying, you don't need my physical body here to do God's will. Your relationship with me outlasts whatever it is that we are about to face. What I want you to see is that because of Jesus, the disciples have more than just a vague awareness of God's existence. They may not realize it yet. Jesus has to get them there. But what they have with Jesus is a relationship. And in relationship, there is redemption. Here's how Craddock puts it. It is not satisfying simply to have witness in creation that there is a God. There is nothing saving, nothing redeeming in believing there is a God. Our desire is to know God, to know what God is like. What is God's relationship to us? Show us that which no cloud, no bird, no leaf, no sunset can tell me. Knowing God is the result of God's sanctifying grace. Knowing God comes from reaching a place in the faith journey in which we start to see Jesus' teachings are not arbitrary. They are what is needed to save us and to save humanity. I am the way and the truth and the life, he says. We remember I am is the name of God. We remember in John chapter 1, the gospel makes the claim that Jesus was present at the dawn of creation, that he had a hand in creation. There is something of his love in everything. So to go against it is destructive. It's contrary to how we were made and how the world was created. We see finally that having gratitude for what God has given us, each day, each breath, each relationship, each bit of mercy, that's what saves us. We see that taking the time to listen to God, to set aside the stress and the pain and the sin of the world, to take time away from that in prayer, that saves us. We see that loving others the way that God loves us saves us. Methodists call these means of grace. That doing these actions, doing these works, are means of God saving the doer and the receiver and creation. On the cusp of Jesus' departure, the disciples are afraid that it's back to the drawing board, that something is ending. But in truth, Jesus is in their hearts. In truth, Jesus knows them, and they know Jesus. So that work of redemption, of themselves, of others, of creation, that work has only just begun. Thanks be to God.